up everyone, welcome to the first project update for my ventures into the Age of Sail with Warlord Games Black Seas. So what is Black Seas and why did I decide to get into it? It's an Age of Sail battle game set in 1770 through to 1830. There is the opportunity to extend this further to either side of that period, alongside a range of miniatures in 1/700th scale to go with it. Here's a very quick look at the rulebook that accompanies the game. The rules were produced by Warlord Games and cover pretty much everything you'd want for this period. There is a supplement called Hold Fast, which I'll be picking up shortly, but the rulebook itself is very well produced. It's easy to read and follow. The section headings are very clear. Its presentation is spot on. I think it's one of the best Warlord Games rulebooks I've read recently. It's quite short, but it's a simple set of rules with just enough flavour to give you the feel of naval combat in that period. If I just flick through very, very briefly, you've got lots of artwork. A lot of this is taken from Osprey, and they're a huge collection of images and artwork that they use across all of their books, alongside some excellent photography from the Warlord Games studio. Also, it's got a significant part of the book covers the actual period itself and all of the bits you'd like to know about it if you know nothing. So here you can see we've got a look at sails, what each sail is, look at the masts, hulls, all of the names and terminology of them. You don't necessarily need these for the game, but it's a really nice way of just including that bit of extra content which gets your mind interested in a period. I know some people are not fans of glossy rulebooks like this. They'd say it's wasted effort and time. I think this makes it very presentable and accessible. These rules they came out in 2019, so they've been out for a while. This is actually, just say on the bottom here, it's the second printing of it, so I'm assuming this has got some of the initial amendments which were made and corrections. The rules themselves are split into two sections, so there's the core rules and then a set of advanced rules which just kind of come naturally anyway. I'd add these in as you were playing. It's got stuff around ships getting entangled if they go too close to each other, catching fire, things like raking as you go past your opponent's bow or stern. Lots of extra effects that the wind give on you, and I think that's what really set these rules apart for me when I did play them. Is that the wind really feels like it's a big driver of the game and a part of the game. So all the activation is based off the direction of the wind and the ship being closest to it, and that's the order that you go in. Now that plays out very well. It feels quite natural. That's how battles were quite often decided, was whoever had the wind advantage, i.e. being close to the wind, could get the jump on the enemy. I did look at a few other rule sets. I forgot which one it's called, which comes with pre-painted ships. It's not really for me. I want to buy and build my own miniatures. And then there is Kiss Me Hardy by the Two Fat Lardies. That's one of their older games, and I think it tells. I downloaded the PDF after I bought it on their website, and I just couldn't get into it. I find Lardy rules. I quite like some of the games. I found that incredibly hard to read and follow. The presentation, compared to something like this, poor. That's not saying that it's bad in terms of what it's delivering. It's just very of its time. I think it was 2003-4, and it feels it and lacks that polish. But it also uses the classic sort of Lardy card activation system I just don't think that fits with this specific type of game. It feels a bit false. It's creating a false sense of friction to me. It's basing it off of card activations versus basing it off the wind, which is very natural, and it gives you lots of opportunities for the game. I have done a few miniatures. I'll show you those later on. It's a very nice, quick, handy painting guide. It's probably worth bearing in mind as well that these don't need to be strict either. So I mean, you've got the kind of classic Nelson checker, Royal Navy colour scheme, and France here, where they've decided to. They've said they've overemphasised the blue. I think that's perfectly fine. These miniatures are very small. The United States are very distinct, as are the Spanish as well, because they're sort of red and black. But the French did have red hulls as well, as far as I'm aware. So there's plenty of opportunity to do lots of not necessarily conversions, but using paint to change the look of what is effectively a limited set of core miniatures. There's a rigging guide here. This is not the best rigging guide. It's slightly complex. I followed it for the first ship I did. It works perfectly fine, and I will be rigging my ships as well as adding the sails. I'm undecided on the rat lines. I'll show you some examples of those that I've been experimenting with later on. I wasn't keen on the initial acetate ones that come with it. I tried 3D printing some, but I'm also not so sure about those either, so I may go back to the acetate ones that come from Warlord. Another thing about this as well is that you've got scenarios and campaigns that you can play. Holdfast, I think, adds a solo play mode as well, so I'll have a look at that and check that out. But it's got some fantastic artwork as well by Peter Dennis, again from the Osprey books, which very much gives you inspiration. And one of the reasons I picked this project up, so I went down and played a game of it with Ian at Boards and Sword, who put on a historical battle, Tricolome, I think it is, which was one of the few times. Well, I say few. They did beat them quite a few, where the French came off better than the English. It was before the French Revolution, when France decided to get rid of a lot of its captains by chopping their heads off, which really made their navy not quite as good. But there's a lot in there. So you've got we're looking at America, which is not covered up very well in this book. They covered more extensively in the Holdfast expansion. But each nation's represented of the main players. So the English, the French, the Spanish. You've also got the Americans. And I think there's a pirate faction as well. But you can pretty much do what you want with it. Ships have all got fairly sensible stats that play roughly as you'd expect. There's some extra flavour you can add if you want to add in special characters. Anyone who's played sort of modern warfare naval games will probably recognise the name Oliver Hazard-Perry from the class of ships. And you've got famous ships as well, which have got a few extra special rules, which just add a bit of flavour to the game, which I think is great. There are lists for the fleets as well, and the different ships with points. I know people aren't always a fan of points. I think in this case they're quite a good balance, depending on what you're wanting to do. If you're playing a big historical engagement, then you're sorted. You can look that up. You've got everything from a few gunboats or a sloop fighting against effectively the same, to the big massive fleet battles and everything in between. I know one of my plans for the project is just to start small, so I'm doing a few third rates and some frigates, and I'll probably do like a 3 or 4 third rates aside, which gives you they're sort of the main ships of this period, the ships of the line, and they give you I think doing something around that size will give you a really good starting point and not be too long. But again, if you wanted to let people mix it up, someone could go with a huge big first rate up against a load of frigates, and see what happens. and in that case you might want to play with the rules, the points, sorry. So just flicking through as well, you've got extra elements, which do again, they add a bit of flavour, and they could be quite useful for historical scenarios. So you can add extra upgrades onto your ships, and these do and would work quite well in a lot of historical engagements to represent some of the extra differences that the core faction rules don't from a certain engagement. So you've got things like Master Carpenter, which improves your skill, and Gunner, which improves gunnery even more, especially for the British. You're already going to get the gunnery bonuses, but you've got things like Marines and Sharpshooters and all of these little things you can add on just to give a bit of extra flavour to a ship. So if you've got like 2 or 3 frigates in a very, very tiny engagement, these could really add a bit of flavour historically. And in terms of what it covers everything. So it covers right up to the big first rates. The Victory, the Lorient, right down to a very unlucky fire ship if you're on it. But the sloops, the cutters, the schooners, and the gunboats. Again, there's loads of history in here and information. It's not going too deep, but it's giving you more than just a very quick 2-page skim read. And it gives you some ideas on what all the types of ships are, which if you're not familiar at all with naval stuff, it's useful. Some people might say, well, that's just wasting 2 pages. But I think if you look at what the cost of one of these is going to, what are we on, 100 and not quite 100 pages, it's not going to significantly make a difference to the cost to add 5 or 10, 20 pages extra at that sort of size to give you that flavour and help new players to the period. So that's a very brief look at the book. I'm not going to do a review of the rules in this one or anything. I think they're really good. They're very simple, but they add depth. I might do an more in-depth review in the future. If anyone wants that, let me know. I possibly will as well with Hold Fast. I might combine the two. But that's a very quick skim through that while I ramble on. So what did I pick up? Well, I had to get a starter set, so a Master and Commander. But the first thing I actually bought was this third rate squadron. So I bought this from Ian at Boards and Swords after the demo game because I enjoyed it that much. And these are plastic, which is really good if you want to do big fleet battles. They aren't particularly cheap, the pricing. I will put the pricing up on the screen. And then I'll also put the pricing up what I actually paid for this, which I thought was much more reasonable. That's obviously from the third party seller discount. Again, it gives you some nice artwork on the back of the box. It's going to draw you in. If you've never seen this sort of thing before, it's going to get your eye. But it's giving you the sort of 3 main factions as well, which you're going to use: the third rates, the Spanish, the Royal Navy, and the French. And gives you an idea of what you get in the box, which is really good actually. So you get the third rates come on plastic sprues. You get 1 per sprue. That's the hull and the mast. You get a sail sheet, which is on I have a very thick paper or thin card. I think they look great. They're what's on all these examples. You get a little bobbin for the rigging. Each ship has a card which you can track your points and so on, and the wake markers which you use to track your speed, which I don't like on the table. I am going to pick up some sort of battle boards to track them instead, because I think it's just less clunky. But the concept of how that system works is fine. I just don't like the paper on the table. You also get flags for various nations and your acetate rat lines, which are on a sheet with the lines printed on. Each ship does come with, on the sprue for the plastic ones, 3 different sort of, I think they're called galleries at the back of the ship, at the stern. You can mix and match them pretty much. Ships just changed hands quite frequently, and there's no real distinct style, which would only ever be on one side, because the English would capture a French ship and then the French would capture it back, and so on, and the same with the Spanish, all over the place. I can't show the contents of this because I've actually got these in them, and I have started building them, which I will show you where I'm up to with those very quickly later on. Master and Commander. So this is the starter box. Now I've took all the miniatures out of this because I've assembled them and I'm starting on them. But there's been plenty of unboxings on this before. You get 3 frigates and 6 brigs. Now some people, I think, worry that that's not an even force, but I don't think it particularly matters. I think there's a bunch of starter scenarios where you'd only ever have 1 frigate on either side. And plus you've got plenty of brigs, so you can balance the forces out really easily anyway. You don't need to have like the exact same on either side. There's no harm in that. But you can play these battles out however you want. And again, it tells what you get. It's telling you what you get in it, which is quite nice. Is they do have on the back of the box. I wish more companies, but also Warlord themselves, would do this more frequently. It gives you a very quick guide to the colours, and most of these are Army Painter or Vallejo colours, which is great. I've got loads of Vallejo range. And that gives you pretty much the right colours for what they have used in their example images. It does include the rulebook as well. You get a nice paper gaming mat, which is I think the same one you get in Black Seas. This mat here is actually from Geek Villain. It's one of their fleece mats. I was going to pick up a neoprene one. In fact, I had the Warlord neoprene 6x4 mat in my basket, but it sold out. And then I thought I prefer these fleece mats. They take up a lot less storage space anyway. Really quickly, just show you what I get in here. It's an example of one of the sprues. This is for the brig. You get 2 brigs per sprue. You get your bobbin for your rigging. Smoke markers, which is good. The fire one's particularly good because setting ships on fire is fantastic in this game. Dice. So it does use a D3, D6s, and then coloured D10s. And the colours denote different types of guns on your ship, which is it works really well. You've got all your general accoutrements here, so the sails, your cards, the flags, the ship cards that you track them on, the little red markers you see there are trackers for going along your cards. They work fine. I'm going to replace it with some MDF battle boards. I'm either going to buy some or I'm going to see if I can find someone to get them done. You do get frigate sprues. Now these I bought off eBay. You'll get 3 frigate sprues. In fact, if I'll open one of these really quickly to show you. If I can get in it. Again, they all come with these come with the matching cards, the weight markers. You get 3 of these, so you could have an English as French, and a third one. I think they suggest you use your third one in the starter set as a merchant vessel, which is quite sensible for some of the scenarios. Again, you can see you get your hulls, the deck, which is basically 3 pieces plus a few extras. They work really well. Some people say don't glue the masts in. I've found them quite tight fitting. I've always had to file the masts down or drill out the holes a bit more. I wouldn't be too worried. I glued mine in and I could paint around them fine. I'd try one out would be my suggestion. Again, so the other thing you get in here is you get in your a map that you can use for a game just to get your pun running really quickly. It's better than playing on your bare kitchen table. It's useful. And then all the cards and so on. So you get some punch out islands. These are double-sided. Measurements with angles as well, because your ships can turn. Which is quite a nice movement system. Generally you move once, you can turn up to a set angle, which is either 45 or 30 degrees. Then you can move again and turn. And on each turn you can fire as well. It works really well. I like the rules. I'll probably do more in-depth review of them and possibly a battle report at some point. And you've got various little flags so you can identify ships, all the upgrades, different types of shot you can load and so on. It's a really great set. Again, the price, it's gone up. I bought this one from the guys on Tabletop, or Beasts of War as they used to be known, alongside some other kits, just because I was that hooked. So I'll show you some of those in a minute. Right, so as I said, I picked up some more items from the guys over on Tabletop. I picked up the French and the Royal Navy third rates of Renown kits. So these are plastic and metal kits. Again, they come with the plastic sprues for the third rates, but they've got various metal bits to upgrade them to be historically known ships, which you might know of, Renown, as the box says. I'm probably going to do an unboxing of these because I've not seen one, so I'm not going to open them now. But again, it tells you exactly what you're getting on the bike. So you get in here, you get in HMS Bellerophon, HMS Revenge and HMS Tonnant. All three quite well known ships. You can go find out some history about them. I think the website actually does a deep dive on Warlord Games with more information about them. I believe the way these work is the figureheads at the front of the ship and the galleries, I hope I've got that name right, are metal additions to replace the plastic parts from the main sprue. I think there's also a deck as well, yes, it says there's a bespoke metal deck, so I'll have to see how that works. But that's the Royal Navy one, and then the French one, similar again, so you've got the Indomitable, the Formidable and the Argonaut. Again, same pattern, so you get in the gallery and the figurehead along with a deck. Now these do, I'll put the prices on the screen really quickly, cost I think a fair bit more for what's relatively small pieces of metal extra. I like the fact that they have boxed them as a set. They could have just done it as a blister, but people see this and you might pick it up and then see the name and then buy it, and I think that's maybe not a bad way to get it. But I do think the price increase possibly doesn't justify the amount of metal that you're getting. I know it's not just quantity, it's the effort of casting and so on, but it is quite a big jump from what I remember. Again, I got these from the guys on Tabletop. They were reduced quite heavily based off what Warlord's prices were at the time, and didn't actually cost much more than the standard third rate kit. So that's those. As you can probably see, so I'm gonna have 3 third rates on either side at least. So I am doing the French and the Royal Navy. I have that the initial kit that I bought with another 3, which I think I'm going to do all French, which will give me 6 French third rates and 3 British. Now I shouldn't really need many more than that. But what I did pick up as well, I'll very quickly bring it in, the Royal Navy Fleet Box. So I picked this up really recently. I picked this up from the folks over at Grim Dice Gaming, I think, in Grimsby. There again, excellent price on that, and really, really, really great service. I've actually picked up some more bits as well, which will, if I carry on with these project vlogs, will be coming along in one of the additional project vlogs. So these again have a really good mix of plastic and metal, and I think the value of these is excellent, especially the price I got from the Dom over at Grim Dice was really good. I couldn't really say no. But you get a really good selection here. I mean, in all honesty, you don't need to buy anything else really other than these. You could just buy this. If you probably buy the Master and Commander set, it'll get to not a bad way of getting yourself the rulebook and the tokens and so on. And then if you add one of these through each player, you're going to have most of the things you need for, unless you're going to do a big historical reenactment. So we'll have a look what you get in here. You get in 3 third rates, 3 frigates, 6 brigs again. I think this is gunboats. We'll have a look at that again in a minute. And then you get a first rate, which is the biggest sort of ships of the line you get in this period. Again, I really like how they've done this. they've split the box into various different bits. So they're using the plastic sprues. They've only have 3 plastic sprues, which is the brigs, which we've seen before, the frigates, which we've seen before, and the third rates. But they're augmenting these with the back plates and the figureheads. So I think these are for the British frigates. So you get the indefatigable. I can't say it. The one from Hornblower. I can't actually read that one. It's a little bit tricky from where I am. And another frigate. And again, they've all got their matching mastheads. And then you're getting more third rates. So you're getting the Ajax, the Mars, and the Colossus. Which, if you buy in the other set, which I've just shown you, the third rates of Renown, would give you 6 named ships, which will all look slightly distinct, which I think's great. And then you're getting the big first rate as well. This has a resin hull. I believe it comes with metal masts, which some people have said are not the best. But I am aware some of their newer kits, they've been putting the plastic frigate frame in to use the masts off of that instead of having metal ones, which I think is a good idea. And you're getting a gunboat squadron as well, which I think is probably be used in really small games and engagements or certain scenarios. And you get everything in there which you'd expect. So you're getting each ship's card, all the weight markers, the sails, another bobbin of rigging, and it lasts a long time. It goes quite a long way. And the flags. So overall, with that, I don't need much more. I think what I'm going to do when I go down to Boards and Swords again in October for CrackCon 3, the Crack of Doom, is I'm going to pick up the French fleet from Ian down at the store, because the games he's put on were really good and got me into this. I know it's only fair to throw a bit more money his way. What other plans I have got is I'm possibly going to do a US Navy one as well, because they can be used against the Royal Navy, potentially the French as well. But that's more frigate based, and you've got the US heavy frigates, which just adds a little bit more interest to the scenarios and the historical battles you can really recreate. I think I'll wrap this up now in terms of showing you what I've got and where I'm going. In fact, I'll bring it all in a second for a quick shot. Right, so yeah, as I said, that's a quick look at everything I've picked up. It's quite a bit. I have got some reasonably good discounts of all of it, which I'm always looking out for. And I think that'll give me a really flexible, solid core of things I can use. I can create a lot of different scenarios with that. The only thing I really would like more of is some more third rates for the French. So I'll either pick up another plastic third rates box or the French naval fleet set. Possibly. As I said, I'll probably pick that up for me at Boards and Swords, just because it's going to give me some more named third rates. What else I potentially will pick up in the future? So there is some resin merchantmen and smaller vessels, so things like schooners and sloops. It just adds a little bit more variety to the smaller games, which I think will be really useful. I want to be able to do whatever I want with it. So if I want to have a game with sort of 7 or 8, 9, 10 third rates aside, I can. Or I can have a relatively small skirmish between some frigates. I'll leave it at that, I think. What I will do is probably just add another section right on the end where I'll show you some of the miniatures I've been working on so far. So here's a quick look at the first ship I've completed. So this is a French third rate. I've fully rigged it. It's got all the rigging, the rat lines on, and I painted it pretty much as the box says. I am going to change up how I paint the ships. This is just the first one I completed. I wanted to sort of follow a fairly known pattern with it. And it was really enjoyable, actually. I've got to say, this is one of the projects I've enjoyed from the get-go once I picked this up. There's a few lessons learned. So the rigging's fairly straightforward, but it is a little bit fragile. So I did break some of the rigging when I put the rat lines on. Also, I should look at the book to see what these sails are called, but the sails at the force sail or something? Sails at the front, I think I put them on in reverse. I think the bigger one should be at the front and the smaller one should be at the rear. Otherwise, I really enjoyed putting this together. As I said, I glued the masts in and painted it with the masts on. I attached the sails with super glue. I did the sails after the rigging, so for the rigging I followed the guide in the book, tied knots almost everywhere, and added a very small bit of super glue using a cocktail stick just to put a little bit on and seal the joint. And then I've added the flags on again, so I used a good PVA wood glue for the flags. Why I've been experimenting with some of future ones is using the PVA wood glue to affix the rigging. It seems to work just as well as super glue after tying a knot in it. And here's a very quick close-up of the deck. So the colours are pretty much the recommended ones, I believe. So I think it's buff for the hull. I gave this a wash in a light brown wash. I can't remember which one. It was either the Army Paint, a soft tone, or it may have been Seraphim Sepia, which was more of a yellow shade. The deck, I didn't use the deck colour recommended by Warlord. I used another one. But as I said, I want to vary these up, so I may keep the pattern for the fringe just because it's easy to recognise the fringe. The blue tops on the hull, on the hulls. But I'm using different tones for the decking and also for the yellow ochre on the hulls as well. I'm changing that up. So that's that first one. I'll bring you some more. So when I'm painting these, I actually put these on tongue depressors or lollipop sticks. I've got loads of these. I use these for loads of stuff. They're really good for attaching and then painting with. So this one is, again, it's ongoing. I think this is the same colours I used on that, but prior to washes and so on. Again, you see they're really simple miniatures to put together, and I've not had any issues painting around the masts. Your experience on that may vary, but I think it's personal preference. I'd just say try it out on one of the smaller ones like the brigs or the frigates that you get lots of. First, see what you're comfortable with. Again, another third rate. So this one I've gone with a much more darker woody hull colour. I just wanted to keep that sense of variety in the fleet. It certainly helps with gameplay as well to have different looking ships. So if you paint them all the same, even if you put things like flags and the little markers of which ship is, it's just so much easier to see a ship if it looks dark brown compared to a yellow one. So you can mix them into the lines and so forth. So that's those. And then I've done this frigate. This one still needs rigging, but I'm pretty happy with this overall. This one I started experimenting, I believe. No, it's not this one. But there's one of these where I started experimenting painting the gun carriages, which I thought was going to be really hard, but it's not. It was quite easy. I think these take roughly like an hour or two. I'm not the fastest painter, but they're reasonably quick. I mean, they look great like that, and you could just put the sails on without the rigging if you're not afraid. If you're a bit afraid of doing that, but it's not too difficult. So what I would suggest if you are going to do the rigging is, rather than trying to tie knots with your fingers, is to go on eBay or Amazon or any other or your local pound shop, buy a set of tweezers. So one with like 3 or 4 different tweezers in, and use those. They work really well. What I have experimented with, so this third rate here has the rat lines from Warlord on acetate. I don't mind them, but I wanted to experiment. So because frigates aren't too expensive to purchase, I'm trying 3D printed ones on this one. It's not finished. I can't say I prefer them. I think they look maybe slightly bulky. But what I would say, for anyone who thinks resin's too brittle, is these are very bendable. So maybe a little bit more experimentation required with those. As you can see, it's also partly in the process of being rigged. I realised I should have rigged it before I put the rat lines on. That was my fault. Here's what the 3D printed ratlines come out like after I've printed them. Which they take about half an hour. So I'll see. I'm going to experiment possibly a little bit more with these, maybe tweak the sizings and so on, and see if I get a size I'm comfortable with. And then just to show you the last type of ship that there is with the main plastic ones, you got a brig here. This was one I'm working on for the French. As you see, I have been painting the gun carriages, so what I found is paint the gun carriage and then the barrel afterwards, and that works fine. In fact, I've done that on this frigate. I've also added the boats on, so what I'm going to do is mix up how I put the boats on. They weren't always, well, they certainly weren't carried in battle, so in battle they'd most likely be towed behind the ship, because if they were on the deck they would just get smashed to smithereens and be no use. And I think what I'm going to do is put these on acrylic bases. I'm not sure how yet. I've seen a few ways of doing it. I might have some custom ones made to fit what I quite like, but I like the idea of an angle at the back which matches the turning degrees, and a round front, but I'd like to put a notch just before that round front as a measuring point for when you're moving it. That pretty much sums it up. So there's a quick look at a few of the, I should put another brick in just to show you the differences in scales and so forth. But there's a look at the ships I've been working on so far. So I'm hoping to finish these off relatively shortly, and then hopefully there'll be another project vlog update. Right, so thanks for listening, everyone. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all of that sort of stuff, if you really want to. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.